Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back to another Fallout 4 mod review. Today we have another heavy weapon mod to look at, and that is the salvaged sentry bot weapon by the 6th Messenger. Now this is a pretty interesting weapon mod. This is definitely lore friendly in that you literally acquire this thing from a sentry bot as it is its own arm, but you're able to convert it to your own usable microgun for your character, or alternatively even a new melee weapon known as the power drill, and there's even a couple of unique variants you can find out in the world that have some pretty cool effects. So for starters, this mod is going to use mostly vanilla assets, as again, this is just a sentry bot's arm that has been ripped off and turned into a weapon for the player. But that's just fine, as it keeps it nice and tidy and lore friendly, and everything looks like it belongs in game, which is a really nice plus. There is technically leveled list integration for this weapon, at least sort of. We'll get into that in a little bit and how you actually acquire this weapon. You'll never actually find this weapon on enemies, aside from sentry bots of course, but you'll find the parts that you need in order to make it. Again, more details on that later. This weapon does not feature custom animations. This is just going to use your typical reload for the minigun, as most heavy weapons do, and that works just fine for this. And finally, there's actually a good bit of customization available for this weapon. Actually, most of the weapons included in this pack. Especially the microgun itself, you can convert it to fire in many different ways, depending on if you prefer high damage, low fire rate, or high fire rate, low damage. At the end of the day, it's still going to be a minigun, but you can tweak it to perform exactly how you want it, and that's pretty cool. I really like it for user customization, and being able to tweak things unlike the vanilla minigun, which just is a constant 5mm with not much besides that. This makes for a pretty cool microgun alternative. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in game and take a look at this thing, starting with its stats. Now, here is what the microgun is going to look like when you first pick it up, keeping in mind that my character has no weapon perks whatsoever, so these are the raw stats of the weapon. So, the microgun is going to have a base damage of 23, it shoots 5.56 rounds, has a fire rate of 227, which is pretty fast, a range of 119, an accuracy of 62, a weight of 13 pounds, and a value of 325 caps. And this thing looks really cool. I really like its aesthetic, the way that it looks just like you ripped off the arm of a sentry bot, the tri-barrel with the shotgun compensators on the end, which by the way is actually how it looks on the sentry bot. So looks nice, really cool, and a really neat design, and much more sleek than the typical minigun. Now, before we show these things off in action, we need to check out the stats of the power drill, as this thing is a pretty unique melee weapon. It's held just like the standard minigun, though it functions like a melee. It has a damage of 40, it's going to use flamer fuel as its fuel source, it has a fire rate of 181, a range of 5, an accuracy of 80, a weight of 5 pounds, and a value of 200 caps. Now, it's really interesting as this is technically a firearm in the game, but again, functions like a melee weapon. Very, very interesting, and actually has a couple of customization options, which is surprising, but very cool and welcome indeed. Alright, now I do want to show it firing really quick, as it's a bit different than the standard minigun. Instead of needing to charge up to fire, this thing fires instantly. So as you can see, as soon as you click the button, this thing starts firing. Pretty cool. Now, it's important to note that there are actually no sights that you can add at the weapons workbench, so you're going to need to kind of hip fire this thing the whole time, but that's fine for a little bit of a balance. Now, you also get that power drill, which again, held just like the minigun, but when you pull the trigger, it spins the drill and functions like a melee weapon. And if we came over to this group of ghouls here, as you can see, it works like a melee weapon. Very cool. So the way that you actually get a hold of the salvaged sentry bot weapon is pretty interesting. Rather than spawning in a normal level list, you'll actually find it on sentry bots, except it's not a guarantee. So here we see I've killed a few sentry bots, and this one doesn't have one, and neither does this one, but our third one right here has a salvaged sentry bot minigun. So we grab that, and that is a junk item that we can take over to a chemistry station, and once there we head down to the utility section where we can find the microgun and power drill. Now, the microgun is going to require a salvaged sentry bot minigun, along with 12 adhesive, 12 gears, 6 oil, 8 screws, 8 springs, and 12 steel, making this a pretty hefty cost in terms of parts. You're also going to need the Idiot Savant perk and the Robotics Expert perk to be able to craft this. Just keep that in mind before you go and try to grab one of these yourself. Now, additionally, like I said, you can craft the Power Drill with pretty similar requirements. That's going to be 4 adhesive, 12 gears, 6 oil, 1 of those salvaged miniguns, 8 screws, 8 springs, and 24 steel to build that big old drill, which is going to function like a melee weapon. Pretty interesting. Alright, and then there are a couple of unique variants that you can find out in the world, and if for whatever reason you don't want to know what those are, there's a quick spoiler warning right now. I'll go ahead and flash a timestamp at the top of the screen so you know where to skip to when the locations are over. But for those of you who would like to know what they are and where they are, I'm going to go ahead and begin now. Starting with the unique drone cannon, which can be found at the Fort Hagen satellite array. Simply head inside, follow the dungeon till the very end where you get your treasure room, and sitting on the ground you will find the drone cannon, which looks like a drill but functions very, very differently. Simply equip this thing and you'll see that it actually fires a single shot projectile, which is a gigantic plasma grenade that you reload after every shot. Pretty cool. And then the next unique weapon is going to be known as Pow Pow, and it can be found at the Federal Ration stockpile. Simply, again, head to the end of the dungeon where you will find the boss Red Tourette. Kill her and she will have the unique explosive version, Pow Pow, which again, just going to have explosive rounds on your microgun, which is going to be mighty devastating. And now let's go ahead and talk about the attachments available for these weapons. Starting with the microgun, we have a barrel section where we have the long hex barrel, the long tri barrel, the short hex barrel, the short tri barrel, the light hex barrel, and the light tri barrel. Now, the hex barrels are going to have less damage for more fire rate, and the tri barrels will have more damage for less fire rate. So you just choose which one fits your fancy the best. The short hex barrel is going to give you the fastest fire rate, but the least amount of damage. Then we have receiver options where you can change between 38, 556, and 308. Each one up the ladder is going to give you more damage for less fire rate, and that's what most attachments are going to do. It's going to be a trade-off between damage and fire rate, so you can really scale yourself to one end of the spectrum or the other. For the muzzle, you have the option for no muzzle, a compensator, and a suppressor. So yes, you can have a suppressed microgun, which is pretty crazy. We do have a motor, which is going to be the standard motor, the high-speed motor, which will give you less damage and more fire rate, and the fire control motor, which is a targeting computer that overrides the trigger control, limiting weapon fire with a positive target. It's going to give you better critical shot damage and accuracy, as well as increased AP costs, and it's going to require a bit of science to craft. We also have some frame options with the light frame, standard frame, and heavy frame. This is going to give you damage with the trade-off of weight. And then for receivers, we have the standard receiver all the way up to the overpowered receiver. Each of these is just going to give you increased damage, but also increased weight as a bit of a trade-off there. And then we'll go ahead and check out that power drill. Starting with the drill bit, if you have the drone cannon unique, you can actually craft a drone cannon drill bit, which is pretty interesting. For the frames, we have light, standard, and heavy, just like the microgun. And then for the receivers, same thing, standard through overpowered. And finally, we're going to be moving on to the damage tests for today. This time we're stepping it up from our typical Deathclaw to an Alpha Deathclaw, as these are some pretty strong weapons, and they're going to need a strong opponent. On the very left, we're going to be testing out the Power Drill with no attachments, just to kind of see how it performs as a high-end melee weapon. And then we're going to be testing 3 variants of the Microgun, starting with the standard Microgun with no attachments, no perks. Then a microgun suited for all of the fire rate attachments but the lowest damage, and then a microgun with the highest damage but the slowest fire rate to see which one is better when it comes to modding out your weapon. So, starting with the power drill, let's see how we do. So even against an Alpha Deathclaw with no attachments, this thing shreds through him. And I don't even have any melee perks on. Crazy. Let's see how we do with the standard microgun, no attachments against an Alpha Deathclaw. and even that shreds through him pretty quickly. Alrighty then, this is going to be pretty interesting with the super modded out, really high damage and really high fire rate compared to the standard version. As you can see, we were doing less damage per shot, but we were getting it out very quick, and so we ended up killing the Deathclaw a bit quicker than the standard version. Let's see how we do with the slow version, with a tri-barrel, slow fire rate, but really high damage. And that is definitely the way to go. You still have a pretty fast fire rate compared to standard firearms, and you're slinging out 308s very, very rapidly. And that puts that Deathclaw down faster than any of the other variants we saw today. So, high damage, low fire rate is definitely the way to go on this weapon. So yeah, guys, that is the salvaged sentry bot weapon by the 6th Messenger. This isn't actually the first time they've made this weapon, but this is a redux and a remake of the old mod to give it some new life and new features. And it's definitely a very cool one, definitely adds some utility to those sentry bots, as now you can use their weapons in your favor, which is pretty cool. Definitely worth checking this one out, and I highly recommend that you do. If you want to try it out for yourself, it will be linked down in the description below, along with an Xbox link if it is available. Apologies if I sounded a bit off in this video. I do have a bit of a cold right now, so I'm a little sniffly, so sorry if that affected the video quality at all whatsoever, but other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to drop a rating, subscribe if you haven't already for more videos just like this one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace, guys! And really quick, I'd like to make a shout out to all of our patrons. Your donations are greatly appreciated and really help to support the channel and videos just like this one. So again, thank you.